Yes, hello, and a huge warm welcome to this horseracing.net exclusive with a man who I can separately term as a 41 cap England goalkeeper, a man firmly embedded in the structures of both Tottenham Hotspur and Leeds United football clubs, but separately and arguably just as importantly nowadays, he's a family man, a pundit, a broadcaster, and also a horse racing fan. That man is Paul Robinson. Welcome.
Thank you for this superb introduction. I shall have to get you doing more of my gigs for me.
Well, I'm looking forward to the imminent call-up to the Robinson PR squad. In the meantime, I can tell you my name is Tom Lee, horse racing broadcaster by trade. I'm also a friend of yours, Paul, and what I will disclose at this early stage is that I haven't deliberately primed you with too much information about where we're going to go, because people at home watching this want to enjoy, but they want insight, of course, and that's something you can give us about so many areas. So if we may, let's dive straight in, because I've already tickled the tonsils of your career at club level in terms of Leeds United, in terms of Tottenham Hotspur. Leeds making a splash, 16 years away from the Premiership. Lots of people pleased to see them back where many would consider they belong. Your impressions about what they've achieved under Marcelo Bielsa thus far back in the top flight?
I think just the play in the top flight has been fantastic, but I think you can take it back to when he first came in. He's taken a team that were 14th, 13th, 14th in the Championship to Championship winning team, to Premier League team. He's evolved the players. He's made average players into very good players. Liam Cooper and Calvin Phillips, two players who weren't really first names on the team sheet. They weren't starters at the time when he came in. He's made Calvin Phillips into an England international. And as you say, 16 years out of the top flight, which is a long time. I mean, to think that I played in the last game in the Premier League, that shows you how long ago it was. And I think, even the people who hate Leeds United the most wouldn't have thought they'd be in the doldrums for 16 years, never mind playing in the third tier English football. To have them back in the Premiership, I think the term sleeping giant is used far too often for football clubs, but I think it's very fitting and very apt with Leeds United. Love the way that they're playing in the Premier League. He's got one way of playing. It's plan A. If plan A doesn't work, you try and do plan A a little bit better. They're great to watch. I think the biggest compliment you can pay them is they're fast becoming everyone's second favourite team because of the way that they play. I mean, the diehard Chelsea, Man United fans probably won't admit to that and definitely won't say that. But they're a great team to watch. They play attacking football. They press high up the pitch. And as I say, they're very easy on the eye, but they leave themselves open defensively at the back. They're going to lose games this year. They're going to lose goals. An absolutely fantastic bet for both teams to score in every game, because that's what normally happens with them. They create so much, but leave themselves open at the back. They're going to be vulnerable to defeats, as we've seen against Crystal Palace, Leicester, 2-4-1 defeats. And then a couple of weeks after, they go to Merseyside and beat Everton 1-0. I think they're going to be a Premier League club for the foreseeable future. The manager's been absolutely fantastic since he's come in. And I just think that they have to have a timeline, a progression to see beyond Marcelo Bielsa. I think he's stayed at Leeds the longest that he's stayed at any club for a long time. And the progression line is very, very important for them.
El Loco Bielsa, let's focus in on him, because they were devastated when he left Marseille. The supporters at the Velodrome adored, worshipped Bielsa. Separately, he was a renowned strategist and tactician, beloved by his players at Athletic Bilbao when he was in La Liga. One thing he is absolutely famous for is working his players close to the bone. He pushes them and pushes them and pushes them. How would Paul Robinson have fitted in under that kind of regime back in the day, had Bielsa been in charge?
I think I'd have hid behind my goalkeeper coach when the runnings came to the forefront in training anyway. And we read stories about the murder ball that they play in training, and they do that. It's literally just a complete fast, furious game of football. And there's no kind of corners, free kicks or throw-ins or anything. It's just a constant game of football. And I've seen it firsthand myself. I'm up there 3 or 4 times a week. My boy who's in the academy there. So I've seen the running facilities that he's put in there. Not so much a track, more like a path that skirts the perimeter of the training ground. Sprung floor, a proper running track, but not laned or anything. And you can see there are all the undulations in it and what the players are put through. But I think the way that he seems so aloof with his players, but he's got a relationship with these players where, they talk about how hard they work, and they talk about, the stuff that they do in training. And quite often, if a player's not in the starting 11 every week, or the team's not winning, it's quite easy for a player to turn around and go, don't like this, don't like that. You ask any player about Marcelo Bielsa, they say, that's just what we do. That's how we get on with it. I think he's very clever with the media as well. I think he can speak a lot more English than he lets on, but he keeps himself in the media to a very, very minimum, and he concentrates on what he loves doing daily, which is his football. And as I say, I'm there some nights, and he's there. He's got an apartment at the training ground. He's there till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. I mean, we were there the other week. I'll tell you a quick story. It's very funny. He lives in Wetherby, which is a couple of miles away from the training ground, down a very dark country lane that's not lit at all. He walks to and from training. He came out the training centre with a head torch on. You know, the ones that the tradesmen wear sometimes, a bright head torch.
Miner's lamp.
Yeah, miner's lamp to walk home with. And one of the parents asked if they could have a picture with the kid for the little lad. And he went, yeah, no problem. So he stood there, put his arm around this kid, and he's still got his head torch blaring down the lens of the camera. So the parent said to him, he said, do you mind just taking it off? And instead of taking it off, he just stood there and did that and smiled for the picture. He's brilliant.
So in the time-honored tradition of supporters going to the final away game of the season, when fans are allowed back in, perhaps we will see Leeds United followers going to the last away game of the season wearing miner's lamp head torches in dedication to the coach. Talk to me about an early influence on your career. And I also just want to interject and say that you mentioned your lad, Jack, is in the academy there at Leeds. We'll touch on him later because he's a good athlete and he's got a couple of good celebrity contacts I want to grill you on. But in the meantime, a man who much earlier in your career figured and was certainly an influence, you've told me separately, Budgie, John Burridge. Please summarise the influence and the input he had into the early career of a young Paul Robinson.
I can summarise John Burridge very quickly. Lovely, lovely man, wrong planet. He was, the stories, every story you read about Budgie is true, and it's probably tamed down. He was an absolute lunatic, complete madcap. He got me when I was 16, and the goalkeeper sessions at Leeds at the time were probably something similar to what Bielsa calls his murder ball. He used to put on sessions that were such high intensity. He was obsessed with goalkeeping. He just loved every aspect of goalkeeping. We'd play an hour and a half of head tennis in the gym from 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning before some of the other players had even got there. Anyway, he got me when I was 16, a youngster, this young, skinny adolescent thing that came into the academy at Leeds. And I was third in line behind two other goalkeepers for, the youth team at the time. One of them actually being Nicky Byrne, who went on to have a very successful career singing in Westlife, if you might remember. So I took his job, and if it wasn't for me, there'd be no Westlife. Anyway, back to Budgie.
I know you were a big
he thought how soft I was at 16, and he decided to take me on loan to Durham City for 6 months of the season to toughen up. Durham City, who played in the Northern Premier League, whatever it was at the time. And it was rather a tough league, but it was great because at the time I was getting paid £37.50 a week for being an apprentice at Leeds. And I think I was on £50 an appearance and a win at Durham. So I'd go back to the digs on a weekend after, and the Mars bars and fizzy pop was on me when I got back in the digs. But the downside of playing for Durham was that I had to live with John Burridge for 6 months. And that was certainly an experience. I used to get up in the morning when I was at Budgie's, and he'd say, I've got stuff on today. I need to get out. We need to go training early. And this became a routine. We'd go to Newcastle's training ground at like 6 o'clock in the morning before anybody else was there. We wouldn't go in through the gate. We wouldn't go through the front entrance. We'd just hop the fence at the back. And Budgie would say, it's just because it's the easiest way from my house. Anyway, we'd train for an hour or so, and we'd make ourselves scarce before anyone else came in. Unbeknown to me at the time, Budgie had fallen out with everybody at Newcastle. He wasn't welcome at their training ground, but we were training in the far corner of the pitch in the morning. That just sums the man up. And I mean, he's later gone on to the Middle East and the Far East to work out there. And I see him sporadically now, and he's not changed. He's just got the most wicked sense of humour. He's just one of these guys who just rubs off, and makes everybody happy.
Paul, we've got loads to cover, but I will just say, keep your mind back in that era. Stealthily developed and not withstanding any criminal prosecution for breaking into people's training grounds. You came under the influence of Burridge into truly a talented group of young players at Leeds who began to make a real statement of intent. Just remind us of some of the names that anybody watching this will recall from back in that era, because that group had more than a bit of talent about it.
Yeah, there was a few lads that went on to have fairly successful careers. Obviously myself, Jonathan Woodgate, Alan Smith, Harry Kewell, to name a few. It was a very, very strong crop of youngsters that we won the Youth Cup one year. We came runners, lost in the semi-final, I think, the year after to Everton. But at that time, we had an academy manager called Paul Hart, who was assisted by Eddie Gray, and another bloke called Robin Ray at the time. There was the three of them. And they're responsible for creating a fine crop of young Leeds players, probably from 2 or 3 years before I went to 2 or 3 years after I went. And the academy there's always been strong.
The academy there's always been strong. Young players constantly associated with Leeds United, never more so than now. Patrick Bamford, Worthy of an England call, yes or no?
Not yet, no. His goals to chance conversion ratio, not as it should be. Although he's had a fantastic season this year. Got to give him a lot of credit. Been criticised for not scoring goals last year, and he's hit the ground running this year and he's scoring a lot of goals. He's got to do it on a consistent basis and he's got to do it more regularly. You look at the international call-up, you think about Harry Kane, Marcus Rashford, Raheem Sterling. There's your front three. Jadon Sancho comes into that. And I think there's one more place in the Euro squad, if you look at the forwards, that's going to be between Tammy Abraham and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Is he ahead of Calvert-Lewin or Abraham at the moment? I don't think he is. And I think the final place in that Euro squad will be between Abraham and Calvert-Lewin, whoever's scoring goals and in the best form at the time. And unfortunately for Patrick Bamford, I think there's better strikers that will get in the squad ahead of him at the moment.
You regularly, both socially and professionally, spend time with no less than Gareth Southgate, the England manager. Were he to confide in you today and say, Paul, I've got a dilemma, Calvin Phillips, the Euros are approaching, is he worthy of a place in that squad? How would you influence him and why?
You can't influence anybody. It's everyone's opinion. I mean, football's a great game of opinions, which is why we get paid to talk about it. And we're sat here talking about it today. And we all love talking about it, whether it be on the television or down at the pub with your mates. I personally think Calvin Phillips has got a real good chance. I think they've got a very, very strong midfield quartet in the England squad. I think he's probably first to his choice holding midfielders will be Henderson and Declan Rice. But then they've got an abundance of talent in midfield. I think the problem that he's got is balancing the side, because if he's going to play the three at the top, Kane, Rashford and Sterling, and he's going to play three at the back with the two wing backs, then you're limited to two midfielders. But I certainly think Calvin Phillips is versatile enough, and I think he's done enough to warrant everybody talking about him and potentially a place in the squad, yeah, without a doubt. But I think from what we've seen in the last few games, the three at the back with the two wing backs, the three up top, then leaves you with two midfielders. And then it's not having the guts, but it's how do you put Jack Grealish into that? How do you put Mason Mount into that? How do you put Phil Foden into that? When realistically he wants to play with two defensive midfielders because he's got two wing backs. So it's a juggling exercise, and that's why he gets paid the big bucks to get the system and the formation and the personnel right. But at the moment, Jack Grealish is putting his hand up, and whether he changes his formation to accommodate him, I don't see where he fits in. Instead, he doesn't get in ahead of Rashford, he doesn't get in ahead of Sterling or Kane. So you have to then think about changing the formation behind him. And does Calvin Phillips fit into that anywhere?
But a place in the squad overall, even if he wasn't a starter.
I did it the other day for Sky. I looked at a squad, and it's a lot harder than you think. The forward third of the field was the easiest one. The midfield third was the trickiest one. And I couldn't fit Calvin Phillips into my midfield squad, what I'd got, because of others that are versatile in different positions. But yes, I do think he's worthy of a place in the squad should his form continue this year.
Finally, on the Leeds United thing, because we've got to move on, whereabouts, roughly speaking, or even if you want to nominate a specific position, will the club from Ellen Road finish in the 2021 Premier League season?
No doubt they'll do well. They're exceeding expectations already. I've said they'll finish 10th at the beginning of the season, and I think they can achieve that. But sat here right now, like many other Leeds fans, I'd quite happily take 17th. Switch
to your more recent Tottenham Hotspur hat. Supporters there, heaven only knows why, but whenever I've been with you, particularly in the capital, it's like bees to honey. The rapport that you enjoy with the Tottenham Hotspur supporters is a remarkable thing, even to this day. You're a very popular figure there. Could this be the year? And I know it's an unconventional year, it's an unusual year, but it's also a year where Tottenham Hotspur are doing a lot of things right on the pitch. Could you honestly foresee that in a few months' time, Tottenham Hotspur could be the champions of England?
They're definite serious title contenders this year. You look at the squad that Jose's amassed. I think you've got to give Daniel Levy a lot of credit for what he did, the way he backed the manager in the summer, brought Gareth Bale in, which is obviously a huge loan fee, huge wages. The sign of Pierre Højbjerg, I think he's probably the most underrated player in the Premier League. I think he's been fantastic since he's come in. And not just the first 11 that Jose's got now, he's got the squad, he's got a balanced squad. Okay, he's been hit with an injury recently to Alderweireld for the last couple of weeks. Joe Rodon's come in, Davinson Sanchez has come back into the squad. You look now, there's not just a strong 11. Spurs have always had a strong 11. He's now got the strength and depth. And they're playing in a way where they don't look like they're going to get beat. They go one up, and then of Spurs of old, you always thought, maybe got a soft spine, they're going to concede. They go two up, and then they close the game out. Jose's got to be given a lot of credit for he came in, and he's had 2 transfer windows now. And this is the season you can judge him. He's been given the budget to get his own players in. They're playing the way that he wants them to play. And I think it's a really exciting time to be a Tottenham fan. I really do think they've got a genuine chance of winning the league this year.
I was about to say, until you closed off with that kind of emphasis, I was about to say, are you just telling us what we want to hear, or do you really think that? But listen, that's a very fair and a very conclusive answer. A Spurs title could be on in 2021, and there'll be a nice price to do so, because the market consistently, for anybody having a bet, underestimates Tottenham Hotspur. Would you fit in, Paul, in this regime of Mourinho? Because it can be very disciplined. He can be a tough man to work for. That much is evident from his spells at Chelsea, at Manchester United, at Inter, at Real, at Porto. Would you enjoy playing under Mourinho, do you think?
He's a manager that I would have loved to play for, yeah, because I think you look at him now, and there's two sides to Mourinho, really. You look at the Mourinho that was at Chelsea the first time around, when he was winning the trophies and he had a great rapport with his players, and there was a clear man management there, and the players loved and respected him. And then you look at the one that Manchester United got, and it didn't seem the same type of person. He was living out of a hotel. He didn't seem happy. He was disgruntled. There was stories coming out all the time. And when he came to Spurs, I thought, oh, fantastic, born winner, top manager. But which one are we actually going to get? And given the time now, you can see he's just got that spark back in his eye. He's messing about on social media, which on Instagram, which you never thought you'd see from him. And I think he knows what he's sat on there. He's sat on a little pot of gold with the squad that he's got. He knows he's got a real opportunity to win something this year. And I just think his man management skills and the way that he's managing those players, it's there for all to see. I think he's quite clever, as we know in the media. The week before they were trying to qualify for the Europa League, we had a Carabao Cup game against Chelsea, which he hugely played down. Said we're going to play a weakened team, Europe's our focus, etc. Lo and behold, they played a strong team, beat Chelsea, qualified for Europe, and now they're competing on all fronts. He knows, he's not stupid. He knows fine well that he's got a chance of making history. Maybe not winning the league, but winning a trophy this year with Spurs. I'm very confident they will get some kind of silverware this year.
There's one key name I want to pick you up on here, because he's brought Gareth Bale back to the club. Gareth Bale, surely by his own very high standards, a player so decorated as him, multiple Champions Leagues, a starring role 2 years ago for Wales when they went nearly all the way to glory. For a player of his calibre, of his achievements, of his brilliant decoration on his CV, why does he seem to be content to sit on that Tottenham Hotspur bench? Is that a compliment to the current starting 11 at Tottenham? Or is that an indication that Bale is not pulling up trees currently? And if you were Mourinho, how would you manage him? Because that must be a bone of frustration that a player they bought in as a marquee signing currently is not delivering.
He's not been given the opportunity to, but I think you talk about Mourinho and managing players, and I think people in the press have got this very wrong when you're looking at it like that. You're looking at a player who's not played consistently for over 2.5 seasons. He's not had game time. If they go and throw Gareth Bale into the first 5 games and start him 90 minutes, he could break down. They can lose him for the rest of the season. I think they've been very meticulous with his preparation. They're giving him game time as and when they can and where needed. At the moment, the starting 11 in the Premier League, they are pulling up trees. They're winning week in and week out. But I think they've been very, very clever with him. They've got to manage him off the field. He's not as young as he used to be. They've got to keep him right. If they're going to pay his wages and a loan fee for a season, they want Gareth Bale fit and available for every single game. Whereas if they'd gone, right, we've paid X amount of million for him, let's use him first 5 games, every game, you've got every chance that he could break down and you could lose him for 6-7 weeks, maybe more. You don't know. I think the way they've managed him from the start, they've eased him in gradually. They've eased him into the way that they play. They've integrated him into the squad. And you can see he's getting more and more minutes. When he played 90 minutes in Europe last week, and he's getting to a point where he's almost knocking on the door saying, look, I'm ready to start now. But there's others that are playing on the pitch that are doing the job week in and week out. It's a conundrum for Mourinho, but one that he definitely wants to have.
Another fascinating answer. Actually, you've given me completely the opposite answer I was expecting, to Bamford, to Phillips, and now to Bale. So thank you for your honesty.
I thought you were my friend. You don't know me that well, clearly, do you?
Well, listen, we've had our moments down the years. Talk to me about goalkeepers staying on their lines, or not, as the case may be, where penalty kicks are concerned, because VAR has been a dimension changer, a game changer. We're seeing interruptions, we're seeing retakes, we're seeing scrutiny. Where do you stand on this increased focus on goalkeepers being strictly told to stay on their line? Surely that must be a frustration if you're standing between the posts, trying to second guess where a striker might be about to place the ball, if even a momentary forward motion is costing you the ability to be the hero and save that spot kick.
First of all, I hate VAR. Like everybody, let's just get rid of it and have done with it. It's ruining our game. The game that we used to know and love, it's come in and it's ruining it. It's taking the refereeing decisions out of the game. Players, supporters, pundits, everyone, nobody likes it. Unfortunately, it's here to stay. So I don't think, we are going to get rid of it, but they've got to get it right. It's got to be fine tuned. Line decisions, whether the ball was in, whether the ball was out, whether it was over the line, whatever. Yeah, fine, use technology for. But actually, refereeing decisions, red cards, etc. You take it. It's somebody's opinion. The referee on the field has an opinion. The referee watching the monitor then has an opinion to tell the referee on the pitch to go and watch it again, which then puts doubt in his mind. So all that's opinion. So anyway, I'd love to get rid of VAR and I hate it. But from a goalkeeping point of view, it's almost physically impossible to propel yourself sideways without going slightly forwards. It puts the goalkeeper at a huge disadvantage. And I just hate what VAR has taken away from the game. No more so in the Scotland qualification game. You saw David Marshall in the Scotland goal there, made a fantastic save, which should have been unbelievable jubilation for him. But he stopped and looked at the referee to make sure that it was going to be okay. He didn't want to celebrate because he had to wait to see if he'd come slightly off his line. And I think the line decision for a goalkeeper, it's awful. You're going to see goalkeepers start behind the line because you can't, as I said, you can't propel yourself as far as you'd like to go sideways without coming slightly forwards. Yeah. It gives the attacker or whoever's taking a penalty a huge advantage. The way you can get round as a goalkeeper, as I say, is start half a yard behind your goal. So when you actually make your first movement, your foot is on the line and then you spring in sideways. But no, I hate VAR.
And that's another very good stance actually to view it from. As I think one of the frustrations, if you watch football nowadays, there's certain pundits who I won't name in this forum, but a couple who, let's say they like to go for the obvious. The next goal will be important, for example. But that actually, in terms of a goalkeeper's insight and analysis, is absolutely fascinating to start from behind the line and to think of actually coming forward so that you're achieving parity and you've got the spring is a very good visualization. Thank you. A couple of bits here that I'd like to perhaps try and not wrong foot you, but you're definitely starting behind the line right now. Did you or did you not? Is there any truth in the rumour that some years ago, whilst you were a current, I believe, Leeds United player, there was an opportunity for you to go to North London, not to Tottenham Hotspur, just around the corner, Arsenal?
There was talk of it at the time, yeah, and it never came off. It never materialised. I think we were still in the Premier League at the time, and I think there was talk at the time of me and Harry Kewell going in a double deal. But no, nothing ever came off, and I ended up on the correct side of North London.
Good answer. That was a penalty saved. Your son, Jack, threatens, and I know there's a long way to go and you have to manage expectations. He's a good cricketer. He's a good football player. That's not what I want to know about. He's also got various, despite his tender years, should we say celebrity contacts. Jack Robinson, Cristiano Ronaldo. First name terms, explain.
You just saw a picture after the Spurs game at Wembley a few years ago. He was a very lucky young man. He got to go down into the dressing room after the game. One of my good friends is one of the stadium managers there. So he was very, very fortunate to be taken down the tunnel. And as the players had the shower, we hung around. We weren't rushing away. My friend who works there had a few jobs to do, and we were with his family. And he ended up standing in between the two tunnels in Wembley, meeting all and sundry from Real Madrid and having his picture taken. Very fortunate.
What a nice thing. That's some story to be able to go back into school the next day and say, I did manage to get just a couple of little extras after watching the match. A selfie with Cristiano. Very nice indeed.
And guess what? The little monkey put the match ball up his arm as well. So not only did he walk out the few selfies, but he's got a Champions League ball knocking around the house somewhere.
There are some advantages to be gleaned from knowing you, it would seem. Now, this is horseracing.net. And I know that you are increasingly fostering an interest in the sport of kings. You're also from a racecourse town. You originally hail from Beverley, so I'm sure there's a little bit of a seed that's been sown there down the years. Which tracks, and I know you're a big family man, you like taking the wife and kids to Wetherby, which would be one of your locals. Which racecourses have you been to?
We're very blessed where we are around here. I live just outside Harrogate. So we've got Ripon, Thirsk, Wetherby, just to name three. Obviously, York is in close proximity. My parents are over in Beverley. So we are actually right in the heart of racing country, if you like. There's a lot of trainers around here, around Ripon, around Thirsk, all around Malton, around that area. There's quite a lot of horses and trainers around here. So we are blessed with a lot of good tracks. We love going up to Ripon, on a midweek evening in the summer. It's fantastic. It's a real family course. It's known as the Garden Course, I think. And it's one you can literally just drive to, park outside, pop in with the missus and kids, watch a couple of races, have £1 or £2 here and there, have a nice bit of dinner and come home. It's just a really nice, relaxed. I'm not one for going to the big meets. I've been to Cheltenham once. I don't really like the intensity of the big meets, the York, the Ebor, that kind of thing. I much prefer the Thirsk, the Wetherby, and the Ripon ones, the lower key ones. But no, I'm starting to enjoy my racing a lot more now, as you say.
Give me a nice little midweeker in somewhere like Newton Abbot rather than 50, 60,000 people crushed in somewhere, and I'll be very happy.
We had the one night at Windsor. That was good. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. The Windsor races, coming backwards and forwards to the races on the boat. That was a nice experience.
We did, where bizarrely I seem to remember that no sooner had we been in there about 2 minutes than you were talking to Michael Owen, and I was thinking, well, you like going to low-key meetings, and we're meeting a man who's achieved a little bit in his career. That's another story for another day, Paul Robinson. What horseracing.net would like to know, and these are horses that you certainly won't see running at Beverley or Ripon, but you will see running, if you're lucky, at the National Hunt tracks. I don't want to set the smoke alarm off in the Robinson family HQ, but if you've got anything on the long-range radar, if you like, that you think might do viewers a turn next spring when it comes to the likes of the Cheltenham Festival, when it comes to the Grand National at Aintree, anything on your monitor right now that you're thinking could be worth 50 pence each way at a nice price, and why?
I've got a couple in the Grand National. There's one probably a little bit more of an outsider than the other. One last year's favourite, but maybe talk to you about that another day. Let's focus on Cheltenham for now. In the Champion Hurdle, it's a 10-1 each way. Goshen. It's a horse that we've seen, 4-year-old. Last season's Triumph Hurdle, he was winning at an absolute canter. And he's one of the unluckiest losers that you'll see. He came to the final fence and fell at the last fence. And it was just unlucky. He clipped his heels together. It wasn't rider error. And it was just an absolute freak. So 4 years old, probably another year old when we come to the Champion Hurdle in March. Goshen, the youngster. I think you probably get him about 10-1 each way. I shall certainly be having a couple of pounds on that.
Fair play to you, Paul Robinson. Goshen would be one of the great sporting redemption tales, I think, and certainly anybody who regularly accesses horseracing.net will be well aware. You summed that up perfectly, because it was literally sheer misfortune, and it would be one of the great tales of sporting redemption. In the meantime, we talk about great sporting tales. You've been brilliant. You've given us chapter and verse on Tottenham, on Leeds, on England, on selection dilemmas, on VAR, and indeed on your interest in horse racing. Brilliant to have you on horseracing.net. We will see you again. Paul Robinson, thank you.